Damaune Journey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit. We'll start with today. You are the Chief Growth Officer at 72andSunny. Talk to me a little bit about what that means in terms of growth. Like, is that revenue growth? Is that awareness growth? Is that growing new clients, new brands? Like, how do you think about growth?
You've described it all.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for the way by having me. So it's a distinct honor to be the Global Chief Growth Officer at 72andSunny. We have a global footprint, so we have outposts in 4 cities: LA, New York, Sydney, and Amsterdam. Sydney services APAC, and Amsterdam services our European clients and some of our global clients as well. And the role is pretty expansive, I would like to say.
Yeah,
so at the end of the day, can you grow the revenue? Mm-hmm. Can you make the business bigger?
Yeah.
And help the clients that we serve grow their businesses as well? So that's like job number one.
And you've been kind of crushing. Like, you guys are winning a lot of logos. You're getting some big names. Like, what is the secret sauce? Like, what are you doing that's, when people ask you, like, hey, tell me your secrets?
Well, I think it's, so first of all, thank you. We've had a good run. And I think if I'm hopeful, but I'm confident that run will continue. We've had a lot of success lately. I think it's really us being able to show who we actually are. We're a group of people who believe in optimism. That's kind of the ethos, the founding ethos of the name. It's not about the weather. It's a statement of optimism. And I think when we get a chance to interact with marketers who are ambitious and want to up-level their game and move their business forward, they can really sense how we go about that. We're very strategic. We start with strategy, and then that great strategy and insights when it comes to audiences leads into world-changing, game-changing creative. And I think when you get a chance to really interact and discuss that on a personal human level, you can really start to see a shift. And so I think we've run across some brands recently who have that approach and who are excited about working with us in that regard.
I saw a study recently that Gen Zers are not connecting as much with brands as perhaps Gen Xers or millennials or their older cohorts. Like, what do you think is the 2025 and beyond way that brands are going to start thinking about connecting with their audiences, especially their younger audiences? And like, a lot of the words that they used in the study were like words like cringe. Mm-hmm. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think authenticity is a word that's often overused but misunderstood. Mm-hmm. And I think the brands that are most effective at connecting with any audience, despite their demo, is the brand that is most authentic to that demographic. And so when you think about a younger generation of folks who are far more, they have so many more options for media, they have so many more options for how to spend their time, it's more difficult to be authentic to their segment in a moment when they're distracted with other things. And so I think the brands that will show up best and will have the most connection will be culturally resonant and will be authentic to their brand and the people that they're looking to serve.
I found that a lot of times if you don't have that core, and I think what you're saying by authenticity is finding that core of what makes the brand, like what is innate and core to you. And I think a lot of times when I see branding that's not authentic or isn't being, it's a little head scratchy or maybe cringy. Yeah. It's because you're trying to please everybody, or you're not leaning into what's inherent to you, or you're not going with what is in your core inherently. And like, how do you tap into that, I guess?
Yeah, I think part of what we try to do, the reason I said that we start with strategy is because part of our process is to get really deep and understand the audience. We call it growth audiences. Yeah. And it's not just about which audiences would you like to grow with. It's which audiences are you most apt to be able to grow with based on
swim where the water is flowing.
Exactly. Based primarily on who you are as a brand and based on the desires and interests of that particular segment. And what I mean by that is not just what demo do you want to be in, 18 to 24. That's not really the conversation. We understand that part, that's easy. The question is, what is it about those individuals that connects to the brand that you have at a level that you may not be able to see? So for example, we recently won Cadillac, which is a huge deal. As a guy from Flint, Michigan guy, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
My dad worked at General Motors for 34 years building Cadillacs. So it's special to me. But what we found is that the audience they were going after were people who had, that were not just successful, because Cadillac has always been a brand that signaled success It's an iconic brand in so many ways. But it's the people who like to drive Cadillacs are also people who want to share their success with others. And so when you figure out ways that success is shared, it might be people who have swimming pools, because you don't buy a pool to swim alone.
Right.
You buy a pool to have a pool party and invite your friends.
Yeah.
And so when you start finding those other connection points, then you can tap into a person in a way that they may not expect, and frankly, that really resonates with them. And that's how you build campaigns and ideas around those elements to grow someone's business.
Yeah, that's cool. So you talked about Flint, Michigan, which is where you're from.
Yeah.
What's the journey of Damian from little boy growing up in Flint, Michigan to then, living where you live now in San Francisco, Oakland area, running, one of the largest agencies in the world? Like, what's the pathway here?
Yeah, the pathway is really, thanks for asking. It's a really interesting one. So first, I had a loving and supportive family that gave me all the energy and fuel to go off and do whatever I wanted. They said, you can be what you want to be. So that led me to studying engineering at the University of Michigan. Go Blue. National champions. And so I went off and I was an engineer for a number of years at a variety of companies, pharmaceutical companies and the like. And then I went off to business school. I had the good fortune of going to Harvard Business School, which a lot of smart people go there. I must have been an admissions mistake. But had a chance to go there and left that program and really started to see how I could have an impact on business. So utilizing whatever engineering skills I had, the idea of breaking down a problem into its component parts and then solving those parts and applying that to business in a way that could be useful. And so that led to a variety of roles in what I call market making. Some businesses, it was take an existing product and open it to a different market. So I spent 4 years traveling the globe doing that for one business, just taking the exact same thing and applying it to different markets. In other places, it was adapting technologies to a totally different market here domestically. That was a business. We took that company public, and so that was a good thing. Very successful exit. I didn't get rich. I don't own a boat. I don't own a yacht, but it was a good thing. And somehow along the way, I found myself in luxury services, which was a precursor to what we do here in advertising.
It requires a lot of confidence to do those pivots.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm wondering, where does that confidence come from? Is that the basis of growing up in this loving and healthy family that sort of gave you that push forward? Or where do you think you got this sort of innate skill set from?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you'd ask. My grandmother always said, be a leader, not a follower.
Okay.
And so I've applied, and I had a professor at school who once said, as engineers, we tend to think linearly oftentimes. What is my next linear move? And he says, instead of that particular approach, he said, you might want to consider preparing yourself for an opportunity that arrives, even if it's an unexpected one. And so if you combine those kind of two concepts, you might find the next amazing opportunity to impact the world in some way is not in a linear track, which is the next promotion in the same company.
Yeah.
It might be moving to a different place.
And trying something totally
different. So I don't know if I'm necessarily confident, but I'm certainly one who...
But you've had to bet on yourself.
A lot of bets.
Tell me about a time where you've been I'm betting on myself here.
This is a good example.
Okay.
Stepping into advertising in the middle of the pandemic and trying to help a company that has had an amazing run. We're a 20-year-old company now. Very few companies make it to that length of that age, especially in advertising. It's a really tough business.
Absolutely.
And so one big bet was, can I come to this company and provide whatever expertise I have in business as a client? Because I hired agencies before. Can I then apply that to being a part of an agency to help grow other brands, including our own? And so it was a big bet. People look at me all the time like, how the hell did you get here?
Yeah.
Most people start advertising when they're young.
Yeah.
And I'm not young anymore.
I know. Honestly, I think that's a superpower, though, because when you can pivot that way and you can go from something that's completely different and really, apply your skill set and your ability to be open and learn too. I feel like that's that helps you to get even further because you haven't been pigeonholed into one thing your whole career.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a learning agility component to this that I think is really important.
Right.
I think there's specialists all around us, and
Yeah.
the world has gotten more fragmented. So there's
Yes.
more and more specialists, and
Sure.
I fully respect that. But I think there's something about being a bit of a generalist, someone who can understand the world around you and apply lessons from other parts of your life to the current circumstance in ways that other people don't. So part of the idea of me being an outsider is that I have a different perspective than all the insiders. And I think that is one of the things that at least the people that were making the decision at the time thought
Needed.
could be valuable.
When you look back on your career and the path that you've taken, what is something you would tell your younger self?
Be even bolder. So someone look at my career and say, oh my goodness, you've been bold, you've tried all these different things, you've gone these different places. And I would say if I had the foresight at a younger age to shoot for even further stars, like who knows what life could be. So
Do you think that you ever held yourself back?
I think so.
Yeah.
I would say so. Engineering was a wonderful career. There's stability, and you can guarantee that you have a
There's a
good,
path.
solid life. There's a path.
There's a 401k, there's a
All the things, right? There's plenty of companies that need engineers.
Yeah.
Like you will likely not ever be without a job. And in fact, if anything in this country, we have a dearth of engineering talent. And so we find ourselves offshoring a lot of that talent now. But I do think that if I thought about the world through a bigger lens, then I might have chosen to take that same set of skills and applied it in a different way. Maybe not working for a company, but starting my own company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Using that engineering. There was this thing starting as I was graduating called financial engineering in the engineering school. And it was a partnership with the business school in Michigan. And I was like, this sounds cool, but I'm a junior or senior. I don't have time to figure out what that is. And I walked away from it. And I think if I thought about financial engineering as a core skill and as a particular potential career path, who knows where that might have led me. It might have certainly would have opened up different doors than I
Yeah.
was considering at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're not thinking about business and work, what are you thinking about?
My family
Okay.
is part number one.
Yes.
I have a wife and two lovely children.
Nice.
A 9-year-old Kennedy and a 4-year-old Jackson. Hey, kids. And my parents, right?
Yeah.
My parents are still alive and healthy, and my brother has a wife and kids. And so my wife has a thriving family. And so when you're not working, I try, because work is a demanding endeavor
Sure.
for me and for us.
And
I
you're
think.
traveling a lot.
Travel a
Yeah.
lot. I try to spend time with the family,
Yeah.
not as much as I would like. I think I'm probably failing on that dimension.
Do you think you're, like when you were talking earlier, you mentioned when you were doing the Cadillac research about like that sharing and sort of family, and like when you get to that level that you want to share, like is that the place where you're coming up sort of as from a personal perspective?
100%.
Yeah.
Because, at some point in your life, you think about success as things. And at some point in your life, at least I'm at the place where I think about success as time.
Yeah.
How do I take
Absolutely.
the time, which is a finite resource, and use it in a way that is most productive and fills my cup and
Yeah.
the cups of people around me?
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I was thinking about this the other day that maybe our parents' generation was much more like collecting things. And I think there was a little bit of that post-depression, our grandparents, like
100%.
collecting things. And I do think that like, as a society, we're changing. But then, of course, as you grow older, you change too. And it becomes about how am I spending my time?
But you raise an interesting point. Our grandparents, certainly a lot of our grandparents, for sure, coming out of the Depression, had so few things that having something meant something.
Yes.
But what they also didn't have to deal with as much as maybe the frenetic pace of our professional lives.
Yes.
So they were looking for things because they already had time with family. They didn't move too far from home. Their best friends and their church members were all right in the same neighborhood or nearby. In our worlds, success has often meant upward mobility and physical mobility. So I'm from Michigan. I live in California. My family lives in Florida. My wife's family lives in Denver. Being with them is real currency.
Yeah,
it's something
absolutely.
that it's hard to get hands on.
And it's
Whereas
so simple.
that wasn't the case for our grandparents or our parents even.
Right, that's true. And I think our lives are so complex on the work side now that the simplicity is almost what we're craving.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like
That's
that
exactly
getting
right.
back to the roots, that
Yeah.
human connection.
100%.
Is there anything else I should ask you about?
I was just going to say that I think why advertising is
Yeah.
a question I get a lot.
Yeah.
Like with all these pivots in life,
Yeah.
why did you choose advertising?
Yeah, that is an interesting question because we were talking about simplicity. We're talking about human connection. Advertising can be seen sometimes as making people feel inadequate so that they will go buy the thing.
Yeah.
So how do you, and I deal with this all the time too, as a human that works in advertising, like how do you square those two things?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I view advertising through a little bit of a different lens.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's to connect people to things or services. And some of those things or services they need, and some of them, frankly, they don't, but they may want. And our job is to help them see the value in that. But for me, I view advertising as a different tool. So I joined 72 and Sunny during the pandemic. My children were young, and I was watching my daughter in particular observe a lot of screen time and not see herself reflected on those screens. And as a parent, I could choose what shows she watched to find diversity on the screen.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have any impact on which advertisements she saw. And frankly, they're everywhere. It's billboards, it's, banner ads, it's everywhere. And so it became clear to me that images and messages matter a lot. And if I could spend some of my time helping to shape those images and messages so little girls and boys could see themselves maybe in some of the work that we do, or adults, me and you, could see more of ourselves in some of the work we do, that's value added. There's time well spent in that. And if it happens to be that we're also selling a beautiful car, or we're helping you enjoy the NFL, who's a client of ours, then so be it.
Yeah.
But really the connection is, can I see myself in the thing? And I think I want to spend my time helping the world be reflected in the way that I thought it should be.
That's beautiful.
Well,
my final question for you is, you mentioned the NFL. We're here at Super Bowl. Talk to me a little bit about what you guys have going on this week.
Oh boy. We've had the benefit of working with the National Football League now for, I think this is our 6th Super Bowl. And every year we have a Super Bowl spot. This year is no exception. So we have quite a story to be told.
Okay.
Just after halftime of this year's game.
Is it launched yet or no?
It is not launched.
Great.
It's under embargo. There's a lot of goodness to be seen.
Okay.
The teasers dropped yesterday.
Oh, good.
What I'll tell you is that it is focused on something that we've talked about in the past, but we're amping it up a little bit. So if you're curious about what that is, you can go back and see the last couple of years, and you might find a teaser even in that spot 2 or 3 years ago.
Cool.
That signals where we're going this year.
So you're telling the story over time.
Telling a story,
Cool.
and trying to put pressure on an area where we need to see more in the world. So last year, it was telling the story of NFL's international expansion and how if you were born through play, it doesn't matter where you're born. So it was set in Ghana, West Africa, in Accra.
That's cool.
African kid was running through a market. We filmed in Accra, so we expanded opportunities for people in that environment as well to help produce a film that shows up on Super Bowl for 200 million people to watch. And so we try to take those moments in time and not just tell a story about the NFL, but help the world see where we're trying to take the game.
That's great.
And the people we want to be included in that next phase of the game.
Beautiful.
So you'll see more of that.
I can't wait. Damaune Journey, thank you so much for joining me on the Brand Innovators podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a huge honor.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Bye-bye.